Welcome to Let's Talk, and today we're going to paint. So we're going to do a Crimson Fists paint scheme, and we're going to paint this aggressor. Probably be a multi-part video to allow for drying time, etc. and so forth. So, the first thing we're going to do, well, let me explain what we already have done. So, primed all black, white from the top, blue all around, just like I've done in my priming video. That's the process I do. It helps create a little shadowing. So, model is base coated from primer already. So now we're going to apply a wash to get the right shade of blue that I want. Right now this is the Ultramarines blue, Macragge blue, whatever it's called these days, but basically it comes in a spray can. Now typically they're painted with a Cantor blue, which is more of a royal blue. But I don't like base coating by hand because if you have to do 100 models, it kind of sucks, you know. Average army for Space Marines is about 100 or so. So here we go. I'm using the Games Workshop brand handle, and for my washes, I'll be using the medium shade brush from Citadel Paints. So the first wash that we're going to do to get the blue to the right shade is we're going to mix blue tone and green tone, and it's a 2-for-1. So every 2 drops of blue, I do 1 drop of green. So here we go. And the reason I'm adding the green is to give it just a slight greenish undertone, and it just helps bring out the color. It gives it the right, I guess texture isn't really the proper term for it, but it just gives a better looking blue. So we wet the brush, dry it off, and then just the bristles. I'm going to mix the green and the blue wash together. This is Army Painter Quick Shades with blue tone and green tone, and not the military shader, the actual green tone. So here we go. Just like in my wash video, I like to start at the legs and work my way up, and it just gives it this nice rich dark blue tone that I really enjoy. You can already see it on the leg there, and I'll do a side-by-side after so you can see the difference that applying this blue wash really brings out. Gives it that deeper blue and just makes the model or the paint scheme look overall better, adds more depth because of the shading. I will do a final shade when I'm done with all the other base coating, all the other colors of dark tone, and that's just to give it a nice grim dark feel. It's not necessary too much for the blue tone, but I throw it on top of the entire model just to keep it consistency. And then we'll do our highlights last, so we'll probably do this in a 3-part video. So you're just taking the wash, spreading it around liberally, letting it seep into the cracks. Make sure your brush is loaded nicely. If you ever find that you have too much wash in a certain spot, just dry off the brush using the towel, and you'll just tap the dryer brush into the area and it should soak up any excess wash that you might not want in any particular area. So if you enjoy these tutorial type videos and you want to see more, feel free to check out the other videos on my channel. I plan on doing a few different kinds of Space Marines over time here. Starting with Crimson Fists, this is one of my favorite armies. I really enjoy their story. Just the entire thing about having a last stand and why they're called the Crimson Fists in general is actually pretty interesting. Well, let's go into a little bit of lore about them. So basically their story is the Alamo. They held out against orcs for an extreme amount of time despite heavy losses, and were beaten down to 128 men. That's all they had left. At least I think it was 128. And they were able to rebuild just through the clever planning of their leader, Pedro Cantor. Now, Pedro, everybody automatically assumes, oh, okay, Spain, Mexico, blah, blah, blah. But if you look up the Cantor surname, it's actually Hungarian, which I thought was pretty interesting. So, yeah. Anyway, why they're called the Crimson Fists. So, they have a rite of passage where on their homeworld of Rin, the initiates are sent out to hunt a barbed dragon, which is basically a big lizard, and kill it with their bare hands, which is supposed to be an extraordinary feat. And if they do so successfully, they bathe their gauntlets or their hand in the blood of the barbed dragon, and then they're considered a full-fledged Space Marine. But they were named the Crimson Fist before that, and it was after their Primarch having his hand cut off in a great battle. And so they were called the Crimson Fist in his honor. Of course, their background and story has changed over the years. So I'm not really looking to get into a lore debate, but if anybody wants to correct me, please feel free. Comment section down below. And the key to washes, unlike most things, is more is always more. You want to apply it liberally. You don't want to get stingy. You want it to soak into those crevices and cracks to help darken things. And since I'm using this mostly just to tone my blue, I'm using quite a lot on the brush. I'm fully loading it up and spreading it around, making sure to get every little nook and cranny so that I have a nice consistent blue, and I don't have to worry about any awkward pooling as it dries. Now I know some of you familiar with Warhammer might be thinking, why is he painting both the hands all blue and making sure to do a good job? Because Crimson Fists, you know, they have red fists. I just want to maintain a consistency for undercoats. That way it's all the same color and tone, and that way my red, when I go over the top, doesn't look off in some areas. I want to make sure that it is consistent all the way through. Because to me, nothing ruins a paint job like inconsistency. Which is why I always give all my models a once-over, just looking them over, making sure it's all good to go before I do my hard coats. Because I know once you spray on that finishing spray, that's it. You're done. The model is what it is, and it will never be any different. Music in the background currently playing is A Planet by Mark Strettenfield from the Prometheus soundtrack. I like to paint with music in the background. I feel it sets the mood, especially if you're doing things like science fiction-y stuff. I like to play science fiction soundtracks and things like that. That thumping noise is one of my dogs bumping around. He's a noisy boy, so you'll have to excuse him. So you can see now that I'm all done, I'm taking the dryer brush, tapping it on the paper to help get rid of some of the overabundance in certain crevices and cracks and things. So I don't want to obscure all of my detail, because although it's a wash, much thinner than a regular paint, if it really clumps up in there, you'll basically get a fat ink pocket, which isn't much fun, especially when it dries. It's basically a bubble, and it can collapse and completely ruin your paint job. It just looks strange. Kind of a weird spot. Alright, so there we have it. We are washed up and ready to go. I'm going to do the side-by-side. Bear with me for a second here.